Hi everybody. Hello, welcome to today's Friday live class. Welcome back. I'm Dr. Sylvia, a general practitioner, and welcome to AskAwayHealth. Thank you for joining me. I know this is a pretty unusual time for a lot of my subscribers, but for now, it's one of the times that I can actually get and sit in front of the camera and do what I need to do, get out the information I need to do for the stream. So it's okay if you can't meet up with this live. It's okay if you're watching on the replay. That's perfectly fine. I'm hoping maybe in a few weeks' time, I can rearrange schedules and hold the stream when I can get, we can get a lot more people on board and get to ask questions, get to have chats and things like that. So please bear with me. But if you're watching this on the replay, welcome. How are you? How's your week been? Thank you so much to everyone who's watched, liked, commented, subscribed to the channel, checked out the latest video. We're talking about the cervix. So if you've been wondering about your cervix, what is the cervix, what it does, I've just released a video on that topic, covered a lot of detail. So please make sure you go and check that one out. Now, today's live stream, let me set the timer because I promised myself that we shouldn't spend more than 20 minutes on this stream. So today's stream, we're going to be talking about effects from the emergency contraceptive pill, and particularly excess bleeding. And it's based on some questions I've recently received on the channel from some viewers, and I'm going to cover them. But before we do that, we're going to talk a little bit about the method. Let me just pull up my notes, make sure I cover everything I want to look at today. So yes, we're going to be talking about excess bleeding on the emergency contraceptive pill. So we're talking about things like Postinor, Postinor 2, post-pill, take action, plan B, and so on, Levonelle, different names, different brands, Ella, but we're talking about the pills that people take to prevent unplanned pregnancy after unprotected sexual intercourse. Intercourse? Did I say intercourse? I did say intercourse. After unprotected sexual intercourse. So the most common ones, there are two types. The most common one contains progesterone, levonorgestrel. So those are the ones that we commonly know as the Postinor and the post-pill Levonelle, like I've just mentioned. And then there's another type that's known as Ella, and that is not progesterone, but it works on progesterone receptors in the body. That's the difference between the two. And on my channel, if you go to I think our reproductive health playlist or women's health playlist, you see I've got a wide range of videos on the different types of emergency contraceptives. So please go and check them out if you want to know more about them. But of course, these medicines work by delaying ovulation. So that's a principal way of working, because some doctors think that they might also be able to prevent implantation as another method, but the primary way is by delaying ovulation. They should be taken as soon as possible after sexual intercourse. So if you're using these medicines, make sure you check out the information leaflet, make sure you know when you're supposed to have them. The best way is to have them as soon as possible after sexual intercourse, and they're most effective then. But for some of them, like the post-pill, Postinor, you have up to 72 hours to use, while others like the Ella, you have up to 5 days or 120 of them. So these drugs will affect ovulation. Like I said, they delay ovulation, so they will affect your menstrual cycle and fertility for a short period of time. And that means they can affect your bleeding pattern. So if we talk about the side effects of these medicines, commonly women might experience things like breast tenderness or soreness. You might feel sick, you might even vomit. Some people have diarrhea, loose motions. Some people feel very tired after taking these pills. So they have some of the side effects, but they can also cause menstrual irregularity. So when we say, what should I expect after taking the emergency pill? It's really important so that you're not unnecessarily panicking or being very anxious or worried about changes in your pattern that might happen because you've taken the pill. So if you've had the pill, you might expect your next period to arrive around the same time. It might do. Or it might come a little bit early, or it might come a bit later. So any of these could happen to your period. What we recommend is, if you've taken the pill earlier, the emergency contraceptive pill earlier in the cycle, and your period is delayed by more than 5 to 7 days, then please do a pregnancy test, because then it's longer than what's expected. That delay is longer than what's expected. So the most common reason, of course, if there's a delay or if the period is absent, is pregnancy. So please do a pregnancy test if your period is delayed longer than 5 to 7 days. That's the recommendation. But there are other menstrual irregularities. So we've talked about what could happen with a period, but there are other menstrual irregularities I wanted us to talk about in particular. And so these are bleeding that's not related to the menses. Can that happen after you've taken the pill? Is it normal? What should you do if it happens, and so on? So that's the purpose of the video. Now, let me just check and make sure. Is there anything? Okay, fine. So, and let me just have a quick look back on the stream. Okay, so if you have taken the pill and you experienced a different type of bleeding, when should you be worried? First of all, let's talk about what kind of bleeding can happen and what would think is, this is likely as a result of the pill. So you might experience spotting. You might experience a type of menstrual bleeding. So some people say they have 2 periods in 1 month, for example, because they experience a type of bleeding that feels or appears like their usual period. You might even have bleeding that's a little bit heavier, and so you have blood clots alongside the bleeding. And you might also have very heavy bleeding. So these could happen after taking the pill. What we should expect, what is normal or what's acceptable, is if it's spotting, light type of bleeding, not very heavy. There might be a few clots, but not that it's gushing heavy bleeding or there are larger clots coming. That's not usual. That's not expected. So the spotting or the light type of bleeding that happens shouldn't go on for longer than 5 to 7 days, slightly longer. So when something goes outside of that description, that's when you should be thinking, is this normal? So with that said, let's have a look at some of the questions that have come through the channel in the last couple of days. So I'm just going to put them on so that we can go through them together. So here's the first one. Okay, so that's the first one. My girlfriend had her period 2 weeks after taking the pill, meaning she's not pregnant, but she's been spotting for a month now and she's getting frustrated. Is something wrong? Okay, so she's had her period 2 weeks after taking the pill, meaning she's not pregnant. So she's had a period. So it's a safe assumption if the period is the same as it is normally. It's the same length. It's as heavy or as light as it should be. That's reassuring. So that's and it came at about the right time, so that you can take that as period after taking the pill, and you can sort of take that to the bank. Not pregnant. You could go further and do a pregnancy test just to reassure yourself. That's fine. But she's not pregnant, and then she's now been spotting for a month and she's getting frustrated. I will be getting frustrated myself as well. Because of course we all understand the inconvenience this causes, but the issue is, what is the problem? What's wrong? Now, it is longer, isn't it, than what we've said. We've said if it's spotting for about 7 days, 8 days, then it settles. You could put that down to having the pill. But in this instance, it's carried on for a month. So I'd be worried, I'd be a bit concerned about this, and I'd want to look into what's going on. At the end of the day, it's possible, and it might be an effect of the pill, the hormone in the pill. Let's not take that away. But in this instance, I would say, let's check this out. I can't say specifically what could be causing it, because everyone's different. But things I'd be interested in looking at would be, could there be an underlying infection? Could there be other causes? For example, could she have a cervical polyp or cervical erosion? Things that could cause a different type of bleeding. Now, it's important. We can only give general guidance on the channel, but if we know your specific medical background, then we can say, have you had your cervical screening done? Have you had a cervical smear recently? And so you're looking at other possible causes of unexpected bleeding. That's what I'll be doing, because this has been going on for a month. It's not expected. It's unusual. So is something wrong? I can't say that just based on the information here, but there's enough for me to say I would like to check this out further. And by checking out further, it means going to the doctor, sitting down, going through your medical history. Then they might want to do a physical examination, and then they might want to do some tests like take a swab from the vagina, from down below, from the vagina and from the cervix to see if there's an infection, or just to study the appearance of the cervix to see if there's anything like an erosion, like I said, or a polyp, or other things that might be going on in that situation. And if there are no abnormalities, they can't pick up anything that's wrong, then you might think, right, this is likely due to the hormone from the pill, and it will settle down. So that is the way I'll sort of think through this particular problem, this particular question. So in this, I'm just giving general guidance. I would recommend, it's been carrying on for longer than I would expect. If you've had the pill in your last, if you've had the emergency pill in the last month, and I would say to get it checked out. Okay, so that is, let's have a look at the next question. Let's keep an eye on the time as well. Okay, I think we're doing good for time. I promise that we're doing 20 minutes. Okay, so this is the next one. It says, I took plan B. 7 days later, I got my period, and now it doesn't want to stop. So this is similar to the previous one. So, we're dealing with excess bleeding after the pill. So we don't know what the bleeding is like. She says she got her period. So we don't know, does she have heavy periods? Do they light periods? How long has it been? How long has she been bleeding for? So again, these kind of questions, you need to say, well, what else is going on? How heavy is your period normally? How heavy is this type of bleeding? Is there anything different about it? Are you having pelvic pain? Again, if you're thinking about infections and not just worrying about the pill, because when you come to see the doctor, we'll be interested in working out what else could be causing this problem. So what would be useful to know is, she got her period after 7 days, fine, but how much longer has she had the bleeding? How much longer has the period carried on? So those are the questions I want to ask. A bit difficult to do in this instance where there isn't much information. But again, just to remind ourselves that after you've had the pill, your period might come early, or it might come at about the same time. But you could also have, in some women, you could have bleeding that's not related to the period. So it could be a continuation. The period just appears to continue, or the period might stop, and then after a few days, you start off with some other type of bleeding that might be spotting or maybe similar to the period. That can happen. If it does, it shouldn't last for too long. It shouldn't be heavy. It shouldn't last for too long. You may pass a couple of clots and it's not too heavy, you don't see a heavy flow on the pad. It shouldn't be large amounts of blood. You shouldn't be gushing. You shouldn't have pelvic pain. You shouldn't be unwell with it. So if any of that is happening, those are flags, those are red flags that you want to have a chat with your doctor about if those happen. Okay, and I'm going to show you the last question that came around this topic, and a bit more detail in this one. So, I have been bleeding for 2 weeks now after taking a post pill. How can I stop it? I thought this was interesting because of the question, how can I stop it? So again, it falls into that category. It's longer than what we would expect for someone who's taking the post pill, because it's 2 weeks. Should she be unduly anxious? Well, I would question, well, why is she still bleeding? And the other thing to remember as well, and there are not too many studies on this, mind you, but the time of the month when you take the pill, when you take the emergency pill, might affect the bleeding pattern you experience in the weeks after taking it. So it's interesting to see, is it during the first half of the cycle before ovulation, or is it in the latter half of the cycle after ovulation? That might affect. Some studies suggest that might affect how heavy the bleeding happens, any type of bleeding develops after, in the next month after having taken the pill. So how can I stop it is what I wanted to address in this instance. Well, the same principle, okay? The same principle. It's carried on longer than what I would expect, so longer than the 5 or 7 days I would expect for somebody having non-period related bleeding after taking the pill. It's carried on longer than that, so I would say I'd like to have a look at you, so you should see your doctor. Like to go through a few questions. What else is going on? Is there a vaginal discharge? What else has she taken? How many times perhaps has she had the pill or the post pill? Or is she taking any other type of medication or any other type of hormone around the same time? of using the pill? Could she be could she have a sexually transmitted infection? Again, it's really important because that can cause a change, that can cause irregular bleeding. So any type of irregular bleeding can happen with a sexually transmitted infection. Has she got a discharge? So other bits of information that would be useful to work out what's going on in this scenario. And it's the answer that will determine how you stop it. So this is not one that you just take a tablet and you switch off the bleeding. This is one where we need to work out what's caused it. And then that helps us decide and determine what treatment, even if needed. Because at the end of the day, if you've checked all this out and there's nothing to find, there's no abnormalities at all, you could say it could be as a result of the pill. Let's give it a couple of weeks and see how it goes. Or it might be important, it might be necessary to actually go ahead and have some more tests. It might be necessary to go ahead and have some scans, pelvic scans, or to have some camera tests to look into the womb and work out what's causing the bleeding. So these are 3 questions that I wanted us to look at in particular this week on this live stream. I hope you found it useful just listening to the explanation that I've gone through. I also wanted to share, let me see if I can bring this up because I get this question. I'll see if I can share my screen because I thought it was an interesting thing to look at. Just give me a moment. Just still got a few minutes before I close things down. So let me share the screen and share this with you. And okay, so hopefully it should be showing. Yeah, so I just wanted to share with us, we talk about taking the pill at any time during the cycle. So this is from the Faculty of Sexual and Reproductive Healthcare in the UK. And I wanted to show you the comment about pregnancy. Oh, here we go. Okay, so sometimes that question comes up about when are you most likely to fall pregnant? We know about the fertile window. The fertile window is that period of time when you're most likely to fall pregnant. Okay, there is a period of time in a woman's cycle when she is probably unlikely to fall pregnant, and they think this is from the Faculty of Sexual and Reproductive Health, is extremely unlikely to happen as a result of having sex during the first 3 days of your natural menstrual cycle. So the first 3 days, remember your menstrual cycle starts from the first day of your bleeding. Okay, so that's when pregnancy is most unlikely to happen. But it's the second part of that paragraph I wanted to point you to. So pregnancy says, however, pregnancy is theoretically possible after sex on most days of the cycle. So I've got a lot of comments from people asking, well, if the pill only works if you've taken it before ovulation, why do we bother saying we can take the pill at any time during the cycle? Please, it's important. Theoretically, pregnancy is possible at any point during the cycle. Women have even a woman who has a regular menstrual cycle can have a different ovulation period from 1 month to the next. So I know we've got the fertility apps and all those things, but they just give you estimates. So it's important that if you're not about to have, you're not ready for pregnancy and you've had unprotected sex, don't worry about which time of the month it's happened. Go ahead and use the method, the emergency pill. Use it at any point that you need to, so it can be taken at any point, because theoretically pregnancy can happen at any time apart from those first 3 days of the cycle. So I hope that helps. I hope that clarifies that question for anybody who's interested in the question. Okay, so thank you. I know there's a couple of people watching, but they've not popped to say hi. Thank you anyway for watching the stream. I noticed that you've been sort of hovering in the background. Thank you for watching. Right, guys, listen. So go and check out the video on the cervix, which I published on just yesterday. So please go and check it out. Make sure you like the video. Leave a comment if you want to find out more about the cervix. But there is a part 2. Part 1 was all about what's the cervix, where is it located, what does it do. Part 2, I'm looking at health conditions that affect the cervix, and I'm not just talking about cervical cancer. There's a lot more that can happen to the cervix. If you want to learn about that, make sure you come and when is that video coming out? I think it's coming out If it's not next week, then it's the week after. So please subscribe and make sure you've clicked the notification bell so that you know when that video goes live. Okay, so I'm going to round this up now. Thank you so much for watching, particularly on the replay. Drop your questions for me or any comments in the comment section. I'm going to put a link to some of the videos that have come out and the videos about the different emergency contraceptive methods in the description for this video as well. And I will see you again next week. Take care, everybody. Have a great weekend.